have another thing where Brittney Griner says that says something about that effing white girl. Now, can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark said those things? The injuries that black girl was running.
A startling video seems to show Brittney Griner calling Caitlin Clark a fucking white girl. After she fouled out, the WNBA is engulfed in yet another controversy that sums up all that is wrong with the league's treatment of its biggest player, in opposition to the Indiana Fever. The league, which has benefited greatly from Clark's celebrity, is still ignoring the player who saved their faltering organization by himself being singled out for hatred and abuse. Events that transpired during the Indiana Fever's 81-76 victory against the Atlanta Dream on Thursday night were shameful, but regrettably not shocking to anyone who has been observing how WNBA players handle Caitlin Clark. The same athlete who was traded for the Russian Merchant of Death and caused a worldwide stir, Brittney Griner, obviously couldn't take losing to a 22-year-old point guard who is roughly half her weight. Greer was dismissed from the game for accruing too many fouls after laboring terribly throughout the match and scoring just 5 points in 25 minutes. However, instead of leaving the floor with the respect that a professional athlete should have, cameras captured what seemed to, in regard to Caitlin Clark, Greer is mouthing the phrases trash and fucking white girl. Take a moment to process that a seasoned athlete who ought to be a role model for younger athletes who turned to racist epithets because she couldn't cope with being outplayed by someone half her height.
I guess. I'm not we're not lip readers. We're not lip readers. She probably says trash. It sounds like she has said. It looks like what it apparently says is effing
Not watched the game in its entirety. Brittney Griner fouled out late in the fourth, and she was in foul trouble the whole game. The referees was definitely calling everything on her. Even though the Indiana Fever really didn't get a chance to shoot a bunch of free throws that game, they was making specifically calls against Brittney Griner, and she was getting frustrated about it, man. Now, footage has surfaced, a couple different takes on this clip as well as to what she actually said. Some people said she didn't call Caitlin Clark a effing white girl. Some people say that she said what a effing whack call. At the end of the day, she said something
she said. Griner's apparent outburst is evident in the video, which has now gone viral on social media. Although lip reading isn't a precise science, the visual proof is that even untrained viewers can observe what seems to be taking place. This isn't a vague motion or a vague sound. Because she was unable to cope with her own subpar performance on the basketball court, this professional athlete seems to be using racist epithets on a teammate.
Now, it appears that Brittney Griner has been caught on video. And yes, there's a certain amount of lip reading that's going on here, but y'all let you be the judge, because I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to try to decipher what it is Brittney Griner was saying. By the way, she fouled out of a WNBA game against Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever. She plays for the Atlanta Dream now. So here we go. Brittney Griner, who Joe Biden acquired 2 years ago and maybe the most lopsided trade of all time, this side of Deshaun Watson, was caught on camera saying what appeared to be some not very nice things about white girl Caitlin Clark during her little WNBA game last night.
Please subscribe if you're enjoying it. The circumstances behind this occurrence are even more upsetting. By her standards, Caitlin Clark didn't even have a great night. She only scored 11 points in the win. Clark didn't have to lose by 30 points and humiliate Griner in front of the entire country. And this was just one instance of one player performing her duties while another player lost all composure and reportedly used language that would have resulted in the termination of any other worker in any other American business. However, Caitlin Clark was involved in other incidents in that same game outside the Greer incident, which exemplifies the hostile environment she's facing each and every time she takes the court in the WNBA. Clark and Ryan Howard also got into a fight during that game, which led to both players receiving technical fouls. In response to this event, the league fined both players $30 each, as though they were equally to blame for whatever happened between them. Take a moment to consider that. After considering a fight between their biggest star and another player, the WNBA determined that both parties should receive a $30 fine, which is the equivalent of pocket change for professional athletes. However, the league has been silent when Brittney Griner seemed to hurl racial epithets against that same great player.
A lot of very, very racist women, right? These are racist women who were told that they were God's gift to women's basketball, that they are black, and because of that, they are better than white people at sport. That's the one area that they can succeed over white people in sports, right? And this is their league, right? Then you got a young, the stereotypical white girl, pretty, skinny, is better than it comes into the sport and becomes the Michael Jordan, LeBron James of the sport. The face gets more publicity on one than they've ever got in some of their playoff, any of their games ever. Brings more money. They are extremely jealous and won't say it. They want to make it like it's typical basketball. But no, they have made it very clear. Angel Reese, the Brittney Griner, that nobody cared about their league.
When it comes to safeguarding Caitlin Clark, the WNBA has made selective enforcement and double standards its defining characteristic. The league is quick to place equal blame and impose matching sanctions when Clark gets into a physical altercation, as if the player who has transformed their sport is somehow equally accountable for every unpleasant encounter she has. However, the league suddenly exhibits selective blindness when other players cross boundaries that shouldn't be present in professional sports. When you take into account what Caitlin Clark contributes to the Howard incident, the $30 punishment becomes even more absurd. The WNBA's financial, with jersey sales that have surpassed league records and games that routinely attract television audiences that other WNBA games can only hope to reach, this player's mere presence has the power to transform a Tuesday night game into a cultural event. However, the league does not defend her when she is the victim of genuinely unacceptable behavior, but instead punishes her the same as any other player when it comes to punishment. The Griner episode and the wider treatment of Caitlin Clark are examples of behavior that is not unique. It is a component of a methodical targeting pattern that is now impossible to overlook.
Another thing where Brittney Griner says that says something about that effing white girl. Now, can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark said those things? That Angel Reese, that black girl, was running from that. Why is it that the black players can be openly racist? There's investigation into racist comments, but you can be racist toward a white girl who is bringing all these eyes to the WNBA.
Now have Brittney. Griner's use of foul language to express her annoyance over Clark's achievement seems to be bringing this targeting to a whole new level. This trash language between athletes isn't competitive, because she can't stand to be outperformed by someone who embodies everything the league ought to be promoting. This seasoned player seems to be crossing racial boundaries. The trend is obvious. When players are unable to match Caitlin Clark's skill at drawing attention or her professional manner, they turn to making drama, starting controversies, or, in Greer's case, using language that isn't appropriate for professional sports. It resembles viewing a group of adults who are meant to be professional athletes representing the top division of women's basketball become so enraged by a child's accomplishments that they turn to bullying tactics on the playground. The fact that this pattern has grown so predictable just serves to increase its unsettlingness. It seems as though some players have made criticizing Clark their main contribution to basketball discourse rather than concentrating on performances. Every time Clark has a successful game, breaks another attendance record, or attracts new fans to the sport, you can practically predict when the next manufactured controversy will surface.
that Bob Griner said trash followed by fucking white girl. Now, like I said, I'm not a lip reader. I don't know what she said. But again, the perception is the only thing that matters. And the perception throughout the WNBA is players dislike Caitlin Clark because she's white. I think the main reason they dislike Caitlin Clark is because she's white and has elevated the league into the mainstream.
The WNBA's total inability to defend the athlete who has contributed more to their league than anyone in recent memory is arguably the most frustrating part of the whole scenario. Seeing Caitlin Clark turn their sport from a niche product to a cultural phenomenon, this is the same organization. However, they appear more concerned with pleasing the gamers that pursue her than safeguarding their most important resource. The league's lack of response to the Greer tragedy reveals a deal about their priorities and lack of moral character. The WNBA has decided to act as though it didn't see footage that seems to show one of its players shouting racial epithets at their biggest star occur instead of dealing with it directly. This goes beyond merely leadership. When avoiding uncomfortable talks takes precedence above upholding professional norms, that is cowardly leadership. Examine how other professional sports leagues respond to comparable circumstances. When you take into account the league's prior reactions to far less serious events involving Clark, their inaction on the Greer incident appears even more heinous. They quickly placed equal blame for the Howard altercation, implying that they are more than capable of acting when it serves their interests. However, they suddenly become paralyzed when confronted with what appear to be racial epithets aimed at their top player.
The thing is, I wonder what would happen if you catch one of the white players saying effing black girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, what would happen if Caitlin Clark was saying something around that way with her lips? Oh, the internet will burn down, fam. They will be coming at Caitlin Clark left and right. You already have some people, especially in the media, saying, oh yeah, Caitlin Clark always get these special whistles. She's this, she's that, race this, race that. So I can only imagine if she messed around and had a video that was close to something like this. Come on.
From a financial standpoint, one of the most ill-advised choices made by contemporary sports management is Caitlin Clark. Protecting an investment that has revolutionized their entire business is more important than simply acting morally, albeit that should be sufficient justification. The effect of Caitlin Clark on WNBA attendance, TV viewership, and item sales are quantifiable facts that appear in all of the league's financial metrics. They are not subjective. Her games routinely draw far larger crowds than other WNBA games. Her presence has drawn sponsors and media attention that the WNBA could not have afforded with their full marketing budget, and her jersey is the league's best-selling item. However, the league appears resolute to sabotage the success by permitting rivals to cultivate hostile environments around their main attraction. Targeting Clark becomes normal when players like Brittney Griner can reportedly use foul language without being suspended, or when Angel Reese can spend months creating scandals without experiencing any repercussions. This strategy is financially suicidal in addition to being immoral. The WNBA fought for television coverage and begged fans to care about their product for decades in an attempt to stay relevant. After Caitlin Clark shows up and takes care of a lot of these issues by herself, the league fails to shield her from the players who ought to be appreciating her efforts to improve their sport.
Personally, I will be reaching out to the WNBA to ask if Caitlin Clark, a trash effing white girl, violates its recent announcement, no tolerance for racism and no space for hate campaign. Will report back. Now, that is interesting because we know that they've been pushing their whole campaign about racism, attacks, and all these different scenarios playing out in the W.
The corporate community naturally grasps this idea. When an employee significantly raises the value and reputation of your business, you can shield them from abuse at work, hostile surroundings, and poisonous conduct. You don't let other workers pick on them without consequence while acting as though upholding professional standards isn't your duty. Brittney Griner's ban would involve more than just disciplining one athlete for misbehavior. It would signify the WNBA's ultimate decision to create and implement professional standards that safeguard all players, particularly their most valued ones. The league has the chance to declare that racial epithets, under any circumstances, are unacceptable in professional basketball. Think about the message the league would receive if someone were suspended. It would warn athletes that using racist epithets to disparage their peers will have dire repercussions. Not only disputes on social media, it would show that the league takes workplace harassment seriously and will not put up with conduct that would be inappropriate in any other setting. More significantly, it would demonstrate to Caitlin Clark and other players that the WNBA takes upholding professional standards and shielding its athletes from unfriendly conduct seriously. Has nothing to do with giving elite athletes preferential treatment. It concerns fundamental professional behavior that ought to be applied to everyone, irrespective of their fame or position.
WNBA, what is your current policy on respect to fellow players and racially motivated hostility? Yeah, I mean, what are we doing here?
Caitlin Clark's treatment is a microcosm of all the issues with the WNBA's talent management and positioning. The league appears to let the players who improve the sport become targets for irate rivals who are unable to match their influence or success, rather than honoring and defending them. This strategy hurts not only Clark personally, but also women's basketball as a whole. Young girls watching are given the impression that success will turn you into a target, rather than a celebrated figure when the league's biggest star is subjected to ongoing harassment and targeting without league action. Accomplishment. It teaches children that it's normal to bring someone down through fabricated controversies and behavior rather than trying harder to equal their accomplishment. This strategy has far-reaching long-term effects that go well beyond any one instance. The WNBA runs the risk of fostering an atmosphere where gifted players might choose to pursue other chances rather than endure persistent abuse if it permits its stars to be singled out without consequence. Additionally, it runs the danger of offending the new followers that Clark and other players brought to the game. These supporters came to witness basketball greatness rather than drama on reality TV.
When a white girl joins a majority black league, her coming to the league brings more viewers, more ad money. The Caitlin Clark tide is going to, if embraced, rise all boats. The majority in the league, which is black women, has done everything they can to not welcome Caitlin Clark to the league. Why? There has never been any cost for black WNBA players.
For the WNBA, the Brittney Griner incident marks a turning point. The league has two options. Either it will adopt professional standards that will safeguard all players from improper conduct, or it will continue on its current course of selective enforcement and timid leadership that puts avoiding tough choices ahead of upholding fundamental professional conduct. Grier's punishment would make it quite evident that using racial words has no position in professional basketball and that the organization takes the protection of its players from unfriendly conduct seriously. It would show that being successful on the court does not justify bad behavior and that the WNBA has uniform rules for all players, regardless of their popularity or position. But doing nothing would validate what many onlookers already suspect.